Okay, looks like we're live. So, Judge Sarah, thanks for being here with us. Uh, I'm the vice president of the Young Democrats, so it's my job to manage our endorsement process. And this is not normally how we do it, but we're adapting to the coronavirus. And I
We all
was thinking,
are, right?
right, and I was thinking about what is valuable about the Young Democrats, and one of the things is that when there's an election, people get a chance to meet and get to know elected officials and people running for office. Um, so I wanted to try and make this an opportunity for folks at home to get to know you a little bit. Um, so first thing I want to know is where are you from?
I am originally from Houston. So I graduated from the High School for the Performing and Visual Arts in Houston. And then I went up to New York for about 12 years. And then I came crawling back to Austin because Austin's the best place in the world. The rest of my family's from here. I'm from a family of 6 and everyone was born here but me. So they
Oh
tease me
wow!
a lot is that all of my older siblings were born in Austin. So
And so how long have you been in Austin then?
let's see. I moved back in 1994. So what does that make it? 26 years. Is that
Okay,
right?
yeah.
26 years.
So you've been a witness to a lot of change.
Yeah, well, not just from the time period from moving back forward. I mean, I spent all my summers in Austin with my older siblings. So I remember going to the Armadillo World headquarters and having my older sisters say, "Don't sit on the carpet because you'll get crabs." So
Yeah, not quite the same town anymore.
not quite the same town anymore, but a wonderful town.
So, what
Never.
part of Austin do you live in?
I live in West Austin in my dad's old house.
Okay. Um, so this role you're looking at is the Senate District 14.
Mhm.
So why do you think that this state senator role is so important?
The state senate is extremely important, as you know. Any student of government knows that the lower house is where a lot of things get debated and community passions are vetted, and they're supposed to go up to the Senate with a smaller body to cool the passions and balance the competing interests, so that we can have these two chambers working simultaneously in collaboration. But we've seen over the years, over the recent years, that actually that's flipped. And the Texas legislature, the House, has become the more deliberative and more reasonable body. And the Senate actually has become a place where, because of some in the Republican leadership, it's become a place of divisive politics where Dan Patrick seeks to divide people, confuse people, and then villainize people. I don't think that at this point, even Republicans in that chamber are very enamored of this style of governing. It's running off really good people from public service in both parties.
Yeah, sort of a place of like stridency and I want to say like demagoguery. People trying
Demagoguery
to.
is a very good word for it, yes. But as a friend of mine who was doing a TED talk several years ago mentioned, and she was quoting somebody else, and I'll have to find out who she was quoting because it's such a good one, that if you want to do oppression work, you have to engage the oppressor. And so although I love my job, the job that I had as county judge, I feel that it is my responsibility to do oppression work. And so this is what's necessary.
So, if you were to get this role as the state senator, what do you think? What do you think your duties would be? How would you be interacting with the public? Or
I think that much of what I've learned about public service has been right here in Central Texas, and not just in Austin and in Travis County. In order to get things done, you've got to be able to reach across the aisle, across governmental jurisdictions, and across even geographic boundaries. When you are working on water policy, transportation policy, when you're working on healthcare or education, yeah, right there. We've got, is that the bridge over Barton Creek?
sure is.
So when you're working on these sorts of issues, you've got to be able to lay party aside and make sure that policy takes precedence over politics, so that you can get to a good balance and move something forward. It's not enough to look good; you have to actually do good. So while certainly I want to be a standard bearer for my party, it's not all about waving the flag. You also have to be able to gain ground. So I think that my work in the state Senate is going to look a lot like my work thus far, which is building relationship through shared work, through identifying common goals, through showing what value I bring to solving a difficult problem, because these problems are difficult for both Republicans and Democrats. And if we can recognize each other's difficulties and listen to each other, sometimes we don't like what we are hearing, but we need to hear it in order to move forward together.
And that actually kind of gets at my next question, but I was going to say, what qualities do you think a successful state senator has, and what qualities do you have that you think would make you successful?
I think that it does require a lot of hard work and a systemic view of change, that it won't be enough in the state Senate to do a bill here or a bill there. When you're looking at criminal justice reform, for instance, you need to get down into the machinery and truly understand how the mechanism works so that you can make systemic change year over year and build upon that change. Also, it can't be an every other year job. In order to make systemic change, you got to know what bills got passed last time, see how they operate in the field, see what's not getting done in the field, what is missing from legislation, what perhaps is missing in terms of commission work or in some of our state departments. And then advocate for the changes that are necessary to really move the machinery forward. I'm not interested in sort of a seesaw approach. We're either here or we're there. I'm really looking forward. I want to move the seesaw, the whole seesaw, right. And not just bang back and forth.
So, I mean, you mentioned that you want to continue your work in the state Senate. But so tell us more about what you've done as county judge. Are there any accomplishments you're particularly proud of that you think voters should know about?
Sure. I am proud of the team that we have built over time on emergency operations and response. So our response to COVID-19 has been really the results of years of unfortunate disasters that have occurred here. Whether it is drought or two deadly floods back to back, wildfires across Bastrop and Travis County, and the bombings, domestic terrorism, and now this pandemic. And because we had done some fairly systematic and systemic building of relationship across the entire region, we are now doing COVID response, both in health and economic COVID response recovery for a 5-county region. And that didn't happen overnight. That was years of work in the making to make it possible for us to respond as quickly as we have and keep our infection rates as flat as we have. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also proud of having pulled up a public defender's office at Travis County. We have fought over a public defender's office for probably 50 years, but we got past the fighting to actual progress now. And we have a public defender's office for the first time, and I'm extremely proud of that. I'm also very, very proud of having worked in collaboration with the City of Austin, various other nonprofit organizations, and also state and federal organizations to lay aside 30,000 acres of parkland and preserve land, because climate change is real. And one of our best tools with regard to combating climate change is to lay aside some of our most beautiful portions of Travis County and Bastrop, Hayes, Williamson County, Caldwell County, Burnett County, so that they will be preserved even as we experience such rapid growth. I also look forward to continuing to work on major transit improvements. Our tailpipe emissions are our largest contribution to greenhouse gases. And so transit and this, bear with me here, transit and broadband access are two of the biggest things that we can do to reduce tailpipe emissions and preserve more land for living on rather than driving on.
Yeah, not our tailpipe emissions, because we bicycle everywhere, right?
I do bike a fair amount. I think some folks know that I've got this ridiculous looking yellow bike with really fat tires, super comfy. And I do bike a fair amount, but hey, Texas is a big state, and to get places sometimes you need to get in a vehicle that has a little bit more horsepower than your bike. And I get that. Your question was, would you go back to the question? I want to make sure I answered it.
Major accomplishments that you're proud of.
Those would be accomplishments that I'm particularly proud of. And I would be taking all of that up to the Senate as well. We certainly need to be working on criminal justice reform. Travis County has, while I have been on the Commissioner's Court, pulled up a mental health public defender's office, as well as an adult public defender's office, a sobering center, reduced our jail population to the lowest in more than a decade, and also significantly increased our no cash bond program. We also fought the Charles Kleinert case all the way up to the US Supreme Court with regard to federal immunity for cops who shoot people for mere suspicion. So we've got a lot
of work to do. I have a whole question on
okay.
that. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the pandemic. The state, well, so the country is mismanaging it, setting a bar within the world for how to mismanage it, and then the state is setting a bar within the country for how to mismanage it. I know you have been in a role that responds to emergencies, so I'm wondering, what can we do on the state level to make sure that if this or a fire or a flood or a drought or some other disaster happens, what can we do at the state level to help us prepare for such things?
Well, with regard to emergencies generally, it's important that local authorities, and particularly local authorities in major metro areas, have local authority and local control to respond very quickly to these sorts of events. The state cannot respond fast enough. The legislature meets only every other year, and the local governments, like cities and counties, are arms of the state 365 days of the year. So they can respond much more quickly, and they should be allowed to respond instead of hamstrung, as the governor has done. So that's the first thing. I would definitely preserve local control in response to emergency events. But then I would also make sure that the state government is ready, willing, and able to come in and provide resources to those local entities. When Harris County experienced Hurricane Harvey, the rainy day fund wasn't tapped. And it's difficult for me to understand what kind of a rainy day do you need if Hurricane Harvey. And also in regards to COVID-19 response, the governor was very proud to announce strike forces that would go into nursing homes and assist those nursing homes with testing and COVID adaptations. That didn't occur in Travis County. It occurred at first. We requested 4 strike forces. We received, I think, 2.5 for about 10 days, and then they were removed. And so Travis County and the city of Austin is bearing the cost, the entire cost, for all of the assistance that we're providing to nursing homes and residential care units across this MSA. So we need to make sure that we provide local control in these responses, but then at the state level, we also provide resources to that local response. These local entities cannot bear the burden alone. Also, we're also seeing that there are 2/3 of the counties in the state of Texas have no public health department. 2/3.
Wow.
Which means that the major metro areas absorb the public health needs of the rest of the state, because the state is not. And so we do need a statewide public health apparatus, most definitely. These other 2/3 counties in the state of Texas should not be having to rely on the major metro hospital hubs. They should have healthcare available to them. Broadband would help that as well. Broadband is kind of a triple threat here. It has climate change benefits, it has educational benefits, and it has healthcare benefits, because we would be able to extend telemedicine out to rural areas where there aren't hospital facilities. So the state really does need to make sure that we get universal broadband. That's another way for us to prepare for climate change and also respond to COVID-19, as well as the economic effects of COVID-19. Before COVID-19 hit, we had a 19% unemployment rate across the state. And I was just looking at statistics on the number of uninsured who are coming through our hospitals, and we're currently at 31.2% uninsured. So by inference, I think we can say that our uninsured rate has probably risen by 1/3 since COVID-19.
Right, with it being tied to employment and with so much unemployment, which is, you know, another thing straining our statewide budgets, and another thing that we could use the rainy day fund for potentially. But yeah, I mean, you make a really great point. It's incredibly frustrating to watch the state both prevent local governments from dealing with major problems and not deal with it themselves. They withhold the right to deal with it and then don't.
And I would suggest it's a three-legged stool of bad. One, and this isn't the entire state. This is current Republican leadership, and it's not always been this way.
Sure.
The Conference of Urban Counties, for which I was the chair, is predominantly a Republican organization. And the Conference of Urban Counties has been arguing for this kind of local control consistently. So the three-legged stool of bad is prevent the locals from having control over their own destiny. Two, prevent them from funding their efforts at local destiny. And three, blame them for when they do fund their efforts at controlling their own destiny. It's really a divide, confuse, and villainize strategy. Tell folks that all of their tax problems are the locals' fault. Mm-hmm. And when the locals can't deliver on the promises that are actually state responsibilities, blame the locals for that as well.
Yeah, I guess I forgot about the gaslighting because I tune it out as much as I can.
Yeah, well, gaslighting is a good way to put it.
So, okay, I want to talk about the police. I think what we are seeing now in the U.S. is a rejection of abusive and brutal police tactics. I think that the Overton window is shifting, and reform measures that we have been considering for a long time are now being viewed as conservative and insufficient measures. You know, I think this is probably a moment of sea change on this issue. So I'm wondering, you know, reform is good, but talk to me about demilitarization, about defunding. I mean, in Minneapolis, they're talking about disbanding. What's further? How can we push this further?
I am so glad that you framed this question up the way that you have, because I think that the definition of criminal justice reform has changed. The frame has just changed. Where people used to think of criminal justice reform as, you know, let's legalize pot, and that was and that was it. Mm-hmm. While I agree with that stance, absolutely, the systemic changes that are necessary are so much bigger and so much deeper than that. What we saw in the murder of George Floyd didn't begin there. It is a centuries old blight of racism in our communities. So yes, demilitarization and defederalization of local community police is what we need to do. I would cast that in a large frame, that we need to demilitarize and defederalize. because the function of local police is to keep us safe, not to wage war on us. It's to keep us safe. So military tactics, military command and control structures are not appropriate to a community police. We need community police. We absolutely need community police that help keep the peace, help resolve conflicts, maintain community standards, all of that. I am not against community police, but I'm very, very much against a militarized and federalized local police force that becomes an enemy to its own people. We saw that with SB 4. I don't know how wonky you want me to get on this, but it used to be.
Let's go 5 out of 10 for the people.
Okay. It used to be that we could say at the local level, feds, you can't make us do immigration policy. It's not a local issue. It's a federal issue. Y'all do it, but you can't make our local police do it.
Right.
And then SB 4 came in and said, you know what, as a state, we're going to tell you that the feds can deputize you anytime they want and you can't say no, which further federalized our local community police. And then you also add the DEA special units and you get a circumstance like Charles Kleinert, who shoots a man in the neck while he's running away from him. And although he's indicted by a local grand jury, that case is removed to federal court and he walks on a federal immunity because he was a temporary deputy under a DEA drug task force.
Wow. And that also had the and that also had the really troubling provision about removing local elected officials who refused to participate.
Yes.
Just for a reminder for everyone at home, they were talking about taking away our sheriff or mayor or county judge or what have you.
I was among my position was among those who was listed as being able to be removed for refusal. Yeah, this goes along with the strategy I was saying before that has been so politically successful and so incredibly divisive from a civic standpoint of divide, confuse, and then villainize or even prosecute.
So, you know, this seat held in the past by Kirk Watson, I think every fan of Kirk Watson had a really similar thought about why they liked him and why he was good at his job. And it was because he would introduce projects, build support for them, and carry them all the way through to success. So I'm wondering what projects and initiatives are you planning to bring that you'll introduce, that you'll build support for, and that you'll pass?
Well, one thing I would very much like to build upon is the redevelopment of the Austin State Hospital, because as we've seen, and as I've been working on for years, we spend way too much money in policing and prosecuting individuals who actually have a mental health disorder or a substance use disorder. Our index crimes, truly violent crimes, haven't increased per capita in decades. What has increased is our drug and alcohol related offenses. So what that indicates to me is that we have a drug and alcohol problem in Travis County and in Bastrop County and across the state of Texas. It's not that we have a crime problem, it's that we have a drug and alcohol problem. That is at base a mental health care issue. And so I do want to pick up the baton where Senator Watson left it with regard to the redevelopment of the Austin State Hospital as a world-class place to get care for anything that ails you with regard to the mind. So that's one big thing. We've made some strides here with the Sobering Center and with the Mental Health Public Defender's Office, but frankly, looking at it from a criminal justice lens is looking at it from the wrong end of the pipe. We need to be looking at it from the healthcare end rather than the criminal justice end. And that's a big part of the de-emphasizing police and re-emphasizing where you actually solve the problem. Another big initiative that I would like to pick up, which has started some, but it's gotten off to fits and starts, is that we need a statewide healthcare information exchange that is secure so that individuals can own their own healthcare data. And that healthcare data is electronic and portable between providers, so that we don't get duplicative labs. We don't get a circumstance of misdiagnosis because one doctor is not looking at the same stuff another doctor is. We don't miss possible trends in public health because we would have all that data in aggregate in a health information exchange. It would have been extremely useful to us in response to COVID-19 if we had had a operable health information exchange at the beginning of this. There are privacy challenges with health information exchanges, but they are eminently overcomable. Arizona has a great one. Oklahoma has a great one. Pretty much every European country has a really good one. There's no reason why we should not have a really good one. So those would be two big things that I would want to do between sessions, working with a lot of partners to make sure that those things get done effectively, efficiently, and fairly.
Yeah, I really like that you brought up mental health and addiction recovery, especially because I think it is almost a privileged thing to be able to get treatment for addiction. You know, if you are of wealth and you hit rock bottom, typically you have resources to go away and to heal. And this is something that's not available to a lot of people, and the cyclical nature of addiction becomes impossible to break.
It's not, and we need to also be taking a look at sick leave policies and unemployment insurance policies with regard to mental health and substance use disorder as well. That information needs to remain private because it's still heavily stigmatized, but it is far less expensive to the overall system if we give a person time to heal from their substance use disorder rather than requiring them to continue to work while they're dealing with it. One of the actually detox from alcohol is a very dangerous health circumstance. You can't be working while you're detoxing. We have literally had, I will tell you, I won't tell you which judge this was, but a judge recently told me that an individual who was had, I believe, 3 active DWIs, who very earnestly wanted to get beyond his alcohol addiction, and told her that he would go into rehab, and so she gave him personal bond. He failed to show, but his roommate showed on his behalf and said that he was detoxing on the kitchen floor because he couldn't get into a rehab. They were too expensive and he had no insurance. So she revoked his personal bond so that he could detox in jail. He could medically detox in jail without cost.
Which is, you know, just sad.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you about that story. I think that she did the right thing, and she did restore his
options.
She restored his personal bond after he was done with his detox, but that was a way for him to get medical detox without cost. And that's, as I said, that is the wrong end of the pipe, but it is a good use of that end of the pipe when things are this messed up.
But it is easy for us to imagine a much better way of dealing with that issue that's
Clearly
fair to more people and doesn't put recovery with a price tag that many people can't afford. I want to mention, I feel like we're going a little bit long. Hopefully folks at home have the attention span to continue watching, because I feel like this is some good content, good educational for everyone watching. But to just move along, I think that typically Democrats in the state legislature end up playing this defensive role, where there's these initiatives that are punitive, or they're removing the ability to self-govern from local entities. So, and I realize the landscape is changing rapidly, but what do you see coming up that you don't like, that you think needs to be stopped, that you are going to work to make sure it doesn't happen in this next legislature session?
Well, redistricting, of course, is top of mind on that. And the numbers, you know, even if we take back the House, the numbers are not great to get good redistricting maps. So I will tell you that as I've been on the Commissioner's Court, I came on the Commissioner's Court in 2007, and I was the deciding vote to enter lawsuit on the 2005 redistricting. And then, of course, we also entered suit on the 2011 redistricting. And so we have been in redistricting lawsuit the entire time I have been on the Commissioner's Court. So I am very, very concerned for what will happen with redistricting, and I will throw my body in front of the train on redistricting. And I will tell you that what throwing my body in front of the train looks like in the Texas Senate is making the best record I possibly can, the clearest possible record in that Senate chamber with regard to the intentions of the people who are in charge, the people who are in power, so that, because I'm a pretty decent lawyer, so that even better lawyers than me can argue it in the courts after it gets messed up in the Texas legislature. Because without an independent redistricting board, it will be messed up. We need an independent redistricting board. Donna Howard actually filed a bill for an independent redistricting board last session. I don't think it even got voted out of committee. So unfortunately, I think it's highly probable that we will have highly unfair maps coming out of the legislature. And I promise you, I will use every bit of experience that I have gained from the 2005 and 2011 redistricting cases that we took all the way to the Supreme Court to make the best record so that the best lawyers can argue for the best result in the courts.
Should we get you some pink sneakers if you get elected? Would there be a
I would love to have
filibuster?
pink sneakers.
So I have to ask a youth-based question. So, you know, voters 18 to 35, we are now the largest voting bloc. So I'm wondering, you know, how have you supported already in your role as county judge, you know, our young people in Travis County?
Actually, I would flip that and say the young voters, this boom of young voters is actually supporting us. I have two kids, 17 and 19. My 17-year-old went down to the protests, and I, you know, said, I am working on COVID-19. I'm very concerned for your health and your safety while you're down there in the protests. And she looked me dead in the eyes and said, I'm 17. I don't get to vote yet. This is my voice. And so I completely supported her in that, and I went down to Houston Tillotson on Sunday as well. But really, I can't say enough about this generation who is actually supporting us, those of us of an older generation, and reminding us of where our first principles are. And I'm so glad for that. Education, of course, is one big way to support this generation coming up. Making sure that college is available to everyone and affordable to everyone is going to be extremely important. And making sure that the K through 12 space as well is sufficiently diverse. One size does not fit every mind. I went to a magnet school. I believe in magnet school experiments inside public school districts. I am an ardent believer in public education. It needs to be within the context of the public school system, with all of the regulatory heft of the public school system, because I don't believe in giving public dollars away to private entities. But that said, it's extremely important to have lots of choice within the public school system, so that we don't leave any talent on the table.
Yeah, and I think that's a really common theme with young people, is like having this concern that there'll never be the opportunity to shine, or that they'll never find the place where they can be successful. I know that's been a frustrating thing for me, is, you know, when will there be an opportunity that matches my talents? So I think it's good that you mentioned that. So my last thing is just, is there anything you want to shout out for people who watch this interview and think, man, that Sarah Eckhardt is really great. I want to support her in the campaign. Website, social media,
Absolutely.
actions they take.
I'm super easy to find. So my email is just sarah@saraheckhardt.com. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I've got a website. If you just type in Sarah Eckhardt, you'll get all of that. And then also, as I've always done the entire time I've been in elective office, I have coffee jolts. They used to be in coffee houses, independent coffee houses throughout Travis County. But now they are on Zoom. So if you would like to drink a cup of coffee on a Thursday morning between 8 and 9, come on the Zoom, ask me questions, tell me stuff I should know, give me assignments. I like that. I like that a lot. And then we also do Friday evenings from 6 to 7. Those are called policy pints. And you can pick those up on Facebook and then come on the Zoom. They're welcome. Anyone is welcome. I have as a personal credo that everyone is welcome, including me, and that nobody is an enemy forever, including me. So really, come on those things. Ask me whatever you want. There's no reason that any one of us should be afraid to listen to one another. So those really are a come one, come all event.
They are. I've actually been to those, so I'll vouch for the people at home that they're very educational and very interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording. Thank you for being here with us as we try to provide the same information and access to the community that they would get if there weren't a pandemic on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate you.